真的，真的，
造谣，感觉到了凶器。
是的。
造谣，什么凶器？
还在问题。
哎，不知道什么是凶器吗？没有看到这个地玩意儿飞的存在吗？就是。
自己在家做笑。
我不是。
我
真的没在
谁信啊？你是那个，我都是你监督是事情，还是监督的？
就是。
他说他是在苏兰里克好歹有老人的电要死，所以他说好像我
在练习，确定吗？我不想看，我已经知道你为了这个 name tag，差点错，差点错。
I started doing this the first time I like did on my own.
真用什么？
I was just getting it.
来电脑，他上学电脑
没有。
Yeah, I gotta teach you how to sell.
干嘛你告
这是我看到在这里。
Just sit down and sit down.
明天行。
我的话一般不去上
Yeah,
学。
yeah. Are you Okay, nice. What are you doing? Okay. Okay.
这表示我有勇气。
Yeah. Yeah. I have like buddies that are like doing one side of their school for college. Yeah. Yeah. I'm from St. Louis, so I came back here for school. Yeah.
又
Yeah. Nice. Oh, really? This is.
哦，天猫。
Okay. Yeah. I love that. It's way different. Like, it's not a bad way. There's a lot more like.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, back in the way, like.
Freaking you.
People were like, not nice.
站位。Yeah, we like we're talking.
Super nice.
No, I'm a.
Not saying I love these.
Yeah, but I went to Georgia for undergrad. Are you a first year? Or is it this only a 1 year?
Only 1 year.
Yeah, I think I'll do it in 3 semesters, but
Yeah.
I don't want to stay. That's so valid. Where are you from? I'm from St. Louis. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay. So that's why I came here for my grad.
There's something.
Are you going? Do you think you're gonna stay here?
One to open up. It's like kind of just like
Yeah. I'm
out.
from Chicago. That's why. Oh, cool.
Okay,
I
so
support
that's
that.
pretty good.
Suburbs. Yeah. That's just one though.
Okay, but it's not like
Yeah, I'm
even like Chicago's got
You're like in the city.
Like,
So I'm
Chicago.
yeah. Who's that one? Like you know how like which place? Where are you working? Like that. Okay.
Well, yeah, especially like 'cause I lived like.
I love Chicago though. Like being up there in the summers. I know.
Yeah, I feel like.
有点作用。
I would like it, but like I kind of didn't like living in the beach. It would always be like it was spilled over the street, like it just gets tiring. I like Boston a lot just because I don't like this stuff like closer. It's like if you're yeah. It's like good and bad, but I don't know. If you're like up at like 4 or 5, it's good, but that's my opinion. Yeah, that was the one thing I missed about but you would. Yeah, I worked okay. No. Those are the summer and winters. I think Boston is a lot nicer. Like around Disney, like cities, like higher cost living, like. It's like. Like I would, I think like drinking such as huge like party like every. But it's like every like it's just like I just want to chill like. Like a Wednesday night, and you're like.
小山的，我出轨了，伪装。
Yeah, it's crazy.
那你是在国内的，没在的。
在营销，
营销。
That's what my buddy works. And like take out for others.
Okay, it's time to start. Okay, if I could have your attention, let's kind of go back over the ground rules here. Do you guys have your name tags? Yeah, put your name tags up. pass attendance around. If you have your name tags up and your computers closed, again, much appreciated. I think it makes a monstrously large difference. Okay, Sandra's not here yet. She's the only person I don't have the feedback on. The video of the last session, I'm getting better about video taping the sessions, so that's problem is fixed. Importantly, as far as the final exam goes, because of the change in date, I have 20 people who can make it. So we're going to have the test on that day. There are 7 people that I'll talk to individually in terms of what the alternative is going to be. So that would be Gray and Jacob, Shuyu, Hao Cheng, Leah. Faij is not here, and I need Haoyun Huang. Haoyun, we need you can make it because you said yes, it's a conflict, so it was confusing to me. But if you can make it,
Maybe I choose the wrong one because I didn't answer all the questions up below because I think I choose the first one.
okay, all right. Well, I'll just put you into the. I'll put you in the. You can make it date. Good. Thanks for letting me know that. Yeah, I had you. If you answered the question, yeah, you're in my good bucket. You're in my good bucket. So,
I can make the exam as well.
well, you've already told me that, so I'm good. Yeah, the only ones that can't make it are the ones that I just mentioned, and you weren't in that list, right? Or you were in that list, so you can make it. So you're switching. All right. Well, but I had you as saying that you could make it, so it wasn't a problem. But Hao Cheng, I had as no. Okay. Anyway, so Gray, Jacob, Shu Yu, Hao Cheng's now. He's Leah, Faija, Haoyun. Wait, Haoyun, you're good for it too. So the 5 just down to 5 people who have a problem, and I will contact you personally via email to talk about what the options are. Okay. I have no responses from Claude in terms of whether he can make the test or Hao-Run Lee. Just now. Okay, that's good. Adarsh, I don't know. Okay, and then Sandra. Sandra, I haven't heard from you.
I'm good.
You're good
To
to?
make it.
Okay. Okay. And Hao-Run, you can make it. Claude, can you make it? Let me know. Let me know. Just let me know right now. I'll anybody that I'm not sure about, I'll connect with. Okay. Okay. All right. Then we'll work around that. Okay. So we'll work through that, and by next week we'll have it all ironed out. So just to recap from last session, we went through winning takes care of everything. The Tiger saga continues on. Genetics and insurance, kind of the whole issue of the ethics of business, using information in business arrangements, physical health information. That's actually a very, very big deal, and leads to legislation around the world. We looked at the ethical decision-making model that's in your text. We didn't get to would managers benefit from understanding these ethical reasoning models, but we'll deal with that later. And so we talked a little bit about why we're teaching an ethics class at all anymore, which may not have been that much of an issue in business classes in the 1970s. I think it was, but I think now because of so many breakdowns, there's a lot more attention, especially amongst the AIC, the CPA community, because we're at the cutting edge of these kinds of issues, and there's a lot of pressure on us to give in to our clients. They pay us, by the way, and that's a dangerous situation from a perspective of market information being true and verifiable. So we left halfway through the FCPA. So what I want to do this morning or this afternoon is I want to do the wrap up on the FCPA, get into the Walmart case first because it's a good follow on to FCPA. That's where there's a breakdown there. And then we'll get into the case that you're turning in, the WorldCom case. So that's the agenda. Wrap up, do the Walmart briberies, and then the signs of ethical collapse, which I've postponed as a lecture. It's kind of good to postpone it because as we look at each of these stories, we begin to see when I talk about these the ethical collapse signs, the 7 that Marian Jennings wrote in a very good text or book she wrote. You're going to see you're seeing them in these cases. You're seeing the breakdowns that she's talking about. So when we summarize it all up, I think it'll be a very interesting. I hope it'll be a very interesting thing for you. All right. So let's close this out. Okay, so the deal with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is anything of value can be given to government officials in other countries for their favor or to influence their decision or direct business to them. That's illegal in the U.S. Now, keep in mind that as long as you're exchange traded, this would apply to you. So if you have divisions outside of the U.S. that do this, it's a problem for you. It's a problem for you. And we talked, I think, in closing that is a real challenge for businesses because if they have foreign nationals working in their home country and they know the rules that go there, they have to be brought into brought in to understand the laws that they have to abide by, even though it may not be what they're used to in their home country. Okay. We also talked about having adequate records and books, that this is how they're going to find these Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They're going to go carefully through your books and look for unusual types of charges, miscellaneous expense, consulting expense. A lot of times it's travel as well. Those are the things that are going to get the attention of outside auditors that are trying to look for law breaking along these lines, and it's expensive. It can be expensive for the company. Here's an example: took $1 billion for Goldman Sachs to recently settle their charges regarding bribery. Albemarle $218 million, Juniper Network $11 million, Barclays $6 million in disgorgement alone, not mentioning penalties and so forth. So yeah, this can be serious for the company. It can also be expensive for the company. Disgorgement means that someone's going to judge how much advantage you attained by bribery, and they're going to take that profit back. Okay, so that's the disgorgement part. All right. So let's see here. In some countries, there is an exception. There's an important exception, and that's what's called facilitation payments. Facilitation payments are basically minor payments for simple services like getting permits, expediting orders, things of that nature. This fellow to the right here, when I had my consulting business was quite active, I had people from all over the world working for me. One of them was from Pakistan, and his favorite story on bribery and corruption was the former spouse of the president of Pakistan, and they had a name for him in Pakistan. They called him Mr. 10%. So that's the people that you want to avoid if at all possible. But in some countries, it's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. And the facilitation payments can only be to low-level government officials. Now, there also is a modest gift exception. So if you want to give someone that you are dealing with business-wise, wedding gifts or birthdays, minor gifts of that nature are permissible. Things that would be reasonable and customary that don't have the look and feel of a bribe. And if you do travel, it's probably best not to meet with your customer in Aruba to discuss your product line. That might be considered a bribe of its own. So if you're going to pay for travel of a foreign dignitary or someone in government that you're trying to contract with, it needs to be, again, reasonable. It has to be disclosed to their organization. You don't pay the individual themselves. You pay the travel provider, and it has to be properly documented. So there, I mean, this is the kind of thing. If you got a new product line that you want to show somebody, okay, so you look at all your customers, you bring them into a nice place, 5-star hotel somewhere, show them the new product line, maybe give them a demonstration. You want to show the new aircraft or the new product line. It's very common to do, but yeah, you better be careful that it doesn't look over the top in terms of providing travel to your customers. All part of FCPA. And in terms of the kinds of things that would flag, this is more of an auditing thing, but this is how they get it caught. Oftentimes they get caught by whistleblowing. A competitor will complain about it. Okay, it's or an internal whistleblower. In the case of Walmart, an internal whistleblower said, "Hey, something's going on here. That's wrong what we're doing." And but once the investigation starts, they're not going to investigate kind of on a routine basis. It has to kind of be triggered by something. So if they see payments to offshore accounts or payments for consulting expenses, as I mentioned before, that is a hot area. They're looking for large reimbursements. They're looking for multiple payments in a short period of time. They look at when you're doing business in a certain country, and they're going to compare countries, and they're going to look for unusually large consulting expense as a percentage of total revenue, that kind of thing. They're going to look for ratios of miscellaneous expense to total revenue, things of that nature, to see if they can identify where the money might be coming from. And they're going to look for unusual types of payments, anything obviously paid in cash, manual checks as opposed to electronic transfers, that sort of thing. Okay, so again, to wrap up on this, before we get to Walmart, especially in the purchasing, because you have to understand, think of yourself as a salesperson in terms of this, or think that you have oversight of salespeople, or you're concerned about salespeople. They're the ones that are going to be involved in trying to get their customers to lean their direction. And so this is where you're going to spend a lot of time, making sure they're on board with company policy, in compliance with FCPA requirements, and keeping an eye on the charges that they're making to the business, right? So if you see extravagant vacations, large promotional expenses, and this is where it gets kind of tricky with fraud. Do you look at the lifestyle of your representatives? Are they driving Maseratis to the office? Bentleys, that kind of thing. If you start seeing unusual behavior, this kind of something we pick up in the auditing class where we talk a little bit about this. Oftentimes, if there's fraud going on, you're going to start to see it in the lifestyle of the people that are engaged in it. Okay, paying close attention to tip hotlines. Tip hotlines are required by Sarbanes-Oxley. We've got a tip hotline issue with the Walmart. The tip hotline has to go and get connected to the audit committee on the board. And the audit committee should be populated by law by outside directors. Outside meaning they do not work for the company. And not only do they not work for the company, they are independent outside directors. Independent means that they don't have any business with the company, over 250,000 or some number such as that. So basically you have a true outsider should get the message from tipsters and then raise it to the board, which would begin the investigation if things are going the way they should go. Okay, so we're going to get into the Walmart case. I'm not showing you this. This is after it's all said and done in terms of the final analysis. Walmart had $144 million to settle SEC charges and another $138 million to resolve criminal charges. So combined at $282. We're going to talk about a $282 million problem here. So, and the issue is bribery. So now just one other thing about bribery is there's two kinds of bribery. There's a bribery of public officials to get things directed your way, or for that matter, bribery of another company's purchasing representatives, okay, bribing there. That's fine and well. Official bribery, obviously, we're working with government officials. Um, and then there's commercial bribery, and that's a different thing. And that's where someone pays you to give the company customer list or the company secret formula. Now, the interesting thing about commercial bribery, if you're paid to sell the customer list, now I've had friends end up in court over this with very large companies. They've been working in sales. They go to another, they quit and go somewhere else. And they end up getting sued by their former employer because they got some business. They took away some business with them. Very common situation. Sometimes the customers want to go with the representative. They like the representative. They trust the representative. When the representative goes somewhere else, the business goes with it. So you're working in an accounting firm, Alaya, and you're doing very well in the accounting firm. You decide to start your own business. You set up shop, open your own business. Now customers from where the firm you used to work at come to visit you. You can be sued, right? Did you take the customer list with you? Why is it they're going with you? Are you calling them? Did you, and you may have signed you all familiar with non-compete clauses? What's a non-compete clause, Gwenny?
On the one of them I know is you can be in industry for like 3 years.
Yeah, sometimes 10 years. Okay. So there will be a non-compete clause, very common. And they may, I don't know, is anybody that's worked in the public accounting space on as an employee, have you filled out non-compete clauses anywhere? Some of you had a regular job. Pratham, I'm thinking you. Do you remember? If you might not remember it. Okay. Okay, because once you leave there, they don't want you taking any of their customers with you, right? So the non-compete clauses like that, you won't work in the industry, or you have to be so many miles away from where you were working. There's a questionable legality to non-compete clauses. I had a friend that was not going to work in a certain industry, and once he left, it limited where he could work. So I think it's you talk about ethics and things like this. Is it ethical if I tell Claude, now that I fired you or you quit, now you can't provide for your family because your industry is very unique. You're in the aluminum metal industry. There's not that many, now you've got to move thousands of miles away, or maybe you can't even get a job in that industry. But that's the only place you can get a job. And then all of a sudden, I'm really doing some pretty serious harm to the people that are restricted in that way. Anyway, commercial bribery, sometimes it's not necessarily a crime in every state because the expectation is that the company that's been harmed is going to sue you. So they figure this will be a civil case, and we don't need to prosecute this. So that's just interesting facts. Later on, we're going to talk about Health South and Mr. Scrushy, who ran Health South. And this is an example just of official bribery. He paid the governor of Alabama about $500,000 to get certain people on the state board regarding healthcare. And big mistake, the governor took the bribe and ended up at age 60 something, 65, ended up with 78 months in prison, supervised release, large fine, and so forth. And he was left talking to the judge, telling him, "You can decide whether I die in prison or go home to my family." That's a rough deal, right? Why take the bribe? I'm sure he didn't need the money. Former governor, all that kind of stuff. So some sad stories in this when you get into this area. So let's go to Walmart. Now, I hope if this is on page 147 of your text, if you need a quick tutorial, let me give you a little background. I think the basic story is pretty simple, but Walmart, as you know, $600 billion a year. Now the second largest company by sales revenue in the world, behind now Amazon. Okay, they're not happy about that. So They've got 5,566 stores internationally in 18 countries. So they have a lot of stores around the world. Now, you might not know that if you're from the US. You might think, always think of Walmart as a US operation, maybe even exclusively US, but they're not. More of their stores are outside the US than are inside the US. Now, they're different kinds of stores. They're not the large stores we see here. They're smaller stores. Yeah, go ahead. They're under a different brand name. Okay.
In ShopRite, in South Africa, it's called Macro. It's nowadays.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I didn't.
It's Flipkart.
Okay, so they don't want to be Walmart over there, huh? That's interesting. Well, if you think about it, Walmart's an unusual name. It has to do with Sam Walton, who was the original the person who started the company. So maybe internationally, when they went international, they thought nobody's going to connect with Sam Walton. So, okay, so they do have an international strategy. Now, out of the 5,000 plus stores they have internationally, as I said, that's the majority of their stores, but it's only 18% of their revenue. So they don't make the same kind of money outside the US as they make inside the US, just FYI. About 18% of their revenue is outside the US. You might wonder, why do they bother? In some ways, because it is an interesting situation. Also, in terms of, now we're going to focus in on Mexico just for a minute. Mexico is where the largest percentage of their international revenue comes from Mexico, 42%. So of the 18% that's international, 42% of that is from Mexico, which is the story we're working with. And as I tell you this is kind of an interesting way I'm sort of setting you up for when you look at the next cases, whether it's Health South or the case after that. So, dig into this a little bit, kind of get a little, in terms of your write-up, get a little sense of, okay, what this story is. It helps, right? It helps because how big is this problem? Do they even care about Mexico? Should they care about Mexico? Well, it's they've got reason to. Okay, Mexico, as it's said in the text, I don't know if this is true anymore, but in the case, they said it was the largest employer in Mexico. So that means they've got clout, a lot of clout with those with that country, right? In terms of their revenue per store, just to give you a sense again of why this is meaningful, a typical U.S. store generates about 95 million in sales annually. Outside the U.S., it's closer to 20 million. Okay. Now, what they did in the story is they were hiring third-party intermediaries. They called them gestores. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right in terms of the Spanish. I'll just call it gestores. Trusted fixers, as they call it, to speed up permits. They're trying to get things built quickly. They want to start a store. They don't want it to take forever to build that store. In my hometown, there's someone building a hotel, and I'm telling you, it's kind of like they've been building it for 2 years. Somebody's losing a lot of money just watching it. I can tell. I'm not sure what the breakdown is. There's a shortage of skilled trades. That makes it very difficult in the U.S. right now to get things up and moving. So they were paying these gestores to, as it says, speed up permits for store construction, get confidential information as needed to eliminate fines. And a fellow named Cicero basically sent an email to Walmart to talk about bribes that were going on. According to Cicero, the Mexican operations of Walmart had a culture of very aggressive growth goals, and they were doing whatever was necessary to get the building and construction facilitated in record time. Okay, so the Cicero kind of outs them that things aren't going well. And so there's obviously some internal control failures. They want to get this done fast. Anybody work at Walmart here? Talk about the culture of Walmart. Nobody's worked at Walmart? Oh, good.
Stocked beer for Anheuser-Busch, and like one of the places where I stocked beer was Walmart. So
Okay.
it's like
Okay. And any thoughts on the, just your experience or interaction with the Walmart people?
Didn't really care. I mean, but the one nice thing, they had like really like large aisles. So like when I was like stocking the beer, like they're really easy to like get into like onto the pallet jacks and then like
Okay.
into the, I don't know, but the people didn't realize they were just kind of like showing.
Okay. I've had some acquaintances that worked at Walmart, hyper aggressive, hyper tough.
Is this critters? Are you talking about corporate? Or are you talking about?
I'm talking corporate and leadership, not necessarily, not store employees necessarily, store managers. Yeah, store employees, that's a different thing. In fact, the other day I was in Walmart and I asked someone, where can I find this? And she said to me, I have clocked out, so I can't answer your question.
That's
And I thought, okay, I know this is a young person. I know you're young, but anyway. Yeah, but the manager, a typical manager at Walmart makes quite a bit of money. I don't know, somewhere between 200 and 500,000. And so they are super aggressive. And obviously, and you could see that in the storyline here. They were wanting to get things done quickly, and they were willing to do, as it says, whatever was necessary. And there were some internal controls that failed to identify the corruption, the bribes, the third parties, and so forth that were going on. Okay, worse than that, not only did they not identify them, there's every reason to believe the executive knew it was going on and approved the scheme. That's the aggressiveness. Okay. Well, the improper payments were falsely, recorded, as you might guess. I mean, they're not going to basically say bribery to Joe, whoever. We have a bribery account. Now, there are companies that in time past have had those accounts, bribery accounts, but not anymore. They're at least going to call it something unusual, incidental fees, government fees, something of those nature. Okay, in the case, I don't know if I can get ahead on this, but can anybody comment on the case? There's good guys and bad guys in the case. Okay, I'll just, as you were reading through, and I was thinking to myself, are they reading the ones that that we're not turning in? I hope so. I want you to, they're short cases. So if not for tonight, for our next time, all the cases that are due for the day, I'm trying to stay on board with doing the cases on the day they're assigned. So go through and read them. Laura, do you get a chance to read the Walmart case? Okay.
I had been reading them and then we weren't doing
Okay.
we were doing the ones the day earlier. So.
Okay. That's all right. All right. Well, all right. So I think I'm going to not get far going in that direction. So let me kind of pivot and say there are good guys and there are bad guys. Walmart, it's a very interesting case from the perspective of what Walmart did to stop this from becoming a problem. They knew it was a problem, and rather than address it, they had a strategy. Their strategy was how to derail the problem, derail the criticisms. That's all they cared about. Okay. And so their steps were organized. We'll get into it in a minute, but their steps were all organized on, okay, we got a problem, but the last thing I'm going to do is address it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stonewall, and I'm going to obfuscate, and I'm going to delay until it goes away of its own, just runs out of gas. Okay, and they can no longer press. That was Walmart's strategy. And that's, by the way, if you read the Department of Justice's complaint, and I'll show you in a little bit, that's what really pissed them off, because the fine is larger because Walmart was doing everything but addressing the problem. Okay, so Walmart, this was going in multiple countries, not just Mexico. They were also involved with problems in Brazil and India as well. In Brazil, they hired someone that was referred to as the sorceress because she could magically get everything done for you that you needed to get done. So what had they been doing to cover up their FCPA violations? That's what we get into this gamesmanship. Okay. Scroll down through the question. It's a two-page thing. Scroll down through the wording there, Gray. Oh, you didn't bring your art. Probably should bring the book, or do everybody have a soft version? Is that all they got? print out the case, if you would, in the future. Print out the pages of the case so that we can kind of go chapter and verse. It'll help us a lot. So has anybody got a visual on the case itself? Okay. Yeah, Lauren, you do? Okay, as you just kind of roll down there, do you see what Walmart did to cover this thing up? Go ahead. In this case, you can open it up. Okay, today we'll have if you want to look at the case, open the case up. Yeah, get your computers out. That's fine. Normally we won't do this. Next time, just bring a print. It's just 2 pages. Bring a printout. It'll be much better. Well, let me ask it a different way while you're all looking. Jennifer, if someone in your company were accused of bribery, you're the CEO, and you just wanted to wanted it to go away. You're a huge, large company. What can you do to just make it go away?
Regulations.
Yeah, the FBI is snooping around. You want it to go away? I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is I want to bribe the guys who are coming to arrest me. I mean, if you want to get, it's like fight crime with crime, right? Add crime to more crime. Okay, that would be one way. But besides that, what can you do to make things disappear? Is there a bag of tricks here? Maya, you want to help her out?
Order your employees to not say.
Okay, get control of your employees, right? In some way, let them know what they can say and what they can't say. Okay, that's you want to manage that, right? You want to manage communications completely with regard to what's going on. You don't want them going to the press and saying anything. That's for sure. Okay, so that's good. Anything else?
That's all.
Okay, Lauren, are you running anything there?
Well, it says that the investigation was assigned to their lawyer,
Okay.
counsel of Walmart, and he kind of just went around and like asked people if they had bribed anyone, and they were like, no.
Okay, create basically a phony investigative unit, right? Hire someone who you know will dig into it and surprisingly won't find anything. Okay, so you get a hold of the investigators and say, listen, here's what I need you to do. And in this case, the investigator went and he'd ask him some silly question. Have you seen any bribery? And while he's asking the question, he's shaking his head like, don't tell me that you've seen any. And they go along, and pretty soon they just close the case. Okay, that would be one thing. Anything else? Connor, were you seeing something?
No, I have it on my phone. I'm just trying to see because my like ebook has not been working on my laptop. Like my like Kindle reader, it's kind of
Okay,
causing problems.
okay. I'll run. Okay. Yeah,
You could also try and like discredit the whistleblower.
let's credit the whistleblower. That's
That would, like anyone else would be scared to kind of step out.
Yep.
You know.
Discredit the whistleblower, a standard practice. They're a disgruntled employee. They're just saying stuff. We fired them, or we were going to fire them. Their performance is no good. They're just making it up. And we looked into it, but we found nothing. Okay, that's a classic. We're going to see Wells Fargo is going to do that. We see Walmart's doing that. In fact, yeah, Catherine.
Also with like their journal investigations, they kind of like narrowed them down. They investigate like a few specific things. So then when like those turned up, there's nothing, like they didn't expand it so that they could find anything.
Okay, so let me adjust that just a little bit. Kind of, I'm gonna put some color to that. Also, I'm going to starve the investigative unit of money. Okay, so if I get an investigator who is anxious to really find the truth, I'm going to replace him with someone who's not anxious to find the truth. And then I'm not going to give that unit any resources. Like, okay, I'm going to starve you of the money to maybe fly to somewhere to ask questions. You're not going to Brazil to ask questions. That's expensive. We're on a budget here. Just call them up and see what's going on. Just reduce the resources of the unit that's supposed to investigate this. Make sure that the person doing the investigating understands what they need to do in terms of not find a problem, ask limited questions, abuse the whistleblower. Now that's one thing. I tell you an odd story. We haven't talked much about whistleblowing here, and we will later in this semester. But I have seen the whistleblower. I've been to presentations from the Enron whistleblower and from the WorldCom whistleblower and from more recently the whistleblower for the medical case, the one that they had the one test. It's out of California, out of the Silicon Valley. They have one blood test for all tests, one stick, and they'll tell you about every other. They'll do all the tests on it. Do anybody remember what company that is? I can't remember the name.
Theranos. Theranos.
Theranos. Yes, Theranos. And I've heard the whistleblower from Theranos. And there's one thing that was common amongst all of the whistleblowers, big time whistleblowers that I've heard give their speeches. And that common thing is just, anybody want to take a guess what's common? How-Yun, what do you think all whistleblowers agree on? Say again. Not satisfied with the company? Okay, good guess. Kennedy, what do you think all whistleblowers agree on?
Like so much power and trouble.
Okay, so they all agree that they see a problem and they're trying to solve the problem? Sort of, they want to do that, but more importantly,
Maybe one wanted to do it.
no one wanted to believe it. So if they were giving you advice, what do you think all three of these would tell you about whistleblowing? Sandra?
Like, do we have an issue with honesty or?
No, not really. The advice that all three would give you, and it's very powerful to hear it, is, yeah.
If you have to have very thick skins because they're gonna blame you first.
That's for sure. And so much so that the advice they'd give you is don't do it. They'd say quit. Quit. Because you're going to go through a living hell. And unless you want to go through a living hell, because they're going to drag you through the mud big time. And they all said it wasn't worth it to them, which is sad, but it's true. And it's because of the pushback from the company is severe. So in this Walmart case, executives shut down the investigators. The investigators were criticized. They shifted blame. They shifted the investigation to friendlier people, that is, people who aren't looking for anything. They under-resourced the investigation. They eventually gave the investigation to some, this was the funniest part, if you read this case. The person who ended up running the investigation was one who had also been covering up the payments in time past. He kind of basically redacted them in his previous reports. It's like, well, we don't want to talk about that. And even funnier than that, in my mind, is that he was the one teaching Walmart executives on the how to be in compliance with FCPA legalities. So he was teaching them about how to comply with the law when in fact he was so disobeying the law himself. And I don't think that's kind of why I'm real hesitant about just in general somebody teaching ethics, because all the time in my life, okay, my life experiences, the people who teach ethics are probably the least likely to be ethical themselves. So the fact they put me here makes me nervous about myself. Like, okay, what have I done? What have I done? Okay. All right. So, and this is an exact case of that. The person that ended up running the show was the least ethical person in the organization, and he was the one who was supposed to be guiding them through compliance. Okay, so Walmart profited. The Department of Justice, the way they put this was the Walmart employees knew of the failures. They knew of the corruption, that internal controls weren't catching these things, and they didn't implement any controls to stop this or to get compliance with U.S. criminal laws. And in fact, so they failed to create the safeguards to protect against corruption in these countries. They wanted it, they needed it, they needed to get the jobs done. That you think about it from Walmart's perspective, it's like, okay, you go back to Becker's law regarding cheating. Like, well, okay, if I get that building up faster and we start making money, I'm going to be making a lot of money. How much is the fine going to be for bribery? Okay, all right, 10 million. Okay, we're going to make 300 million if I get it done, 6 months earlier. So it's not a hard thing. It's not a hard, it's not a hard calculation to figure out. It's cheaper for me, way more profitable for the company to cheat than it is to comply. Okay. Okay, where were the questionable payments made, and did this result? Did this harm Walmart? Where was the harm? This became public knowledge, Wall Street Journal, all that kind of stuff. Did anybody hear about this? This is 2005-ish, right? They didn't end up resolving it until 2019. It was going on for years. So that's not swift justice here. But who here stopped going to Walmart because they heard about this? Okay, now your book makes out like Walmart was really panicky about this and they were very afraid of what it might mean, because there's a lot of negative sentiment about Walmart to begin with, right? In the US, because they put a lot of small businesses out of business in small towns. And there's a Walmart in every small town that you're going to go through in this country. Okay, if you've got 15,000 people in your town, you've got a Walmart. Okay, so and those Walmarts negatively affect the local businesses in a big way, and so they already have there's a negative perception. They didn't want to add on to this, but was it serious damage? I didn't even know about it until I read the case. So, and I pay attention to the news on these things. So, arguably, it's never positive. It's never positive. And executives of the company are always sensitive because they don't know if it's going to get out of control. Okay. This one didn't get out of control, but it could have. It could have, because not only is Walmart killing our small businesses, now they're bribing our officials and da 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 da. And in other countries, it become, it can get way out of control because the government officials may say, we don't want Walmart doing business in our country at all. Okay. Here's something more practical so we can kind of move forward on this. How would you, and we'll kind of close on this thought here a little bit. How would a company make sure that their third-party vendors, that's their intermediaries, are operating within the law? This is kind of more like applied ethics. How do I make sure that the people underneath me are doing the right thing? Come up with some ideas here. Okay, Elia, how can you make sure you've got people in another country, you want to make sure that they're abiding by FCPA, they're not bribing people? What is the common sense way to stop that?
It's a bit tricky because
What country are you from, by the way? Zimbabwe. Okay, so you're working here in the U.S. You want the Zimbabweans to abide by FCPA. So how would you make that happen?
I guess on that one, there has to be some form of approval mechanism or any of these sort of payments can be met.
Okay, close control over payments, review of payments. Okay, that's simple and powerful idea. Yeah, Prathana?
We also consider those vendors in the space or vendor list. No,
Okay, yeah, there's no payments going to someone that we don't know who they are and how much they should be getting. And yeah, okay, good. Approve vendors, especially when if you're, yeah, that's always a good thing, right? Because that's a red flag in any audit, a once-off payment to somebody that you don't do any other business with. Who are they? Why did they get the money? Okay, so that's good. Anything else? Yeah, Sandra?
I would have like an American accountant go be part of their team. That's like that is familiar with the like current practices of like the American team.
Okay. Yeah, let me kind of expand on that a little bit. Maybe someone, an American that's very familiar with Zimbabwe or the practices in Zimbabwe, and go through education, right? The big thing here is educating. They need to know what the expectations are, right? So it has to be very serious. And I would add on to that to move things along that what's the punishment? Okay, it's like you want to lose your job. This is the way you can lose it. You can lose it by doing things we're asking you not to do. So you can make a company policy, have a company policy, in case you don't. Enforce the company, educate them on the policy, enforce the policy. Okay, those are some basics, right? Yeah, Claude, what are you thinking?
Maybe this is too advanced. Social audit, so third party.
Okay, and yeah, and to add on to that, risk management and internal controls, after the fact, to make sure that these payments that are going out are in accordance with company policy, right? So to keep people on their toes, I'm watching your spending, I'm looking at what's going on. If I see something, I'm gonna question, I'm gonna come down, I'm gonna talk to you about it, right? And you're gonna explain it to me. Yeah, Leah?
I was actually going to say what you said, like put a face to the just put a face to it. So if anything goes sideways, you know, like that's the person that's the person to blame. So like if you're put in that situation, you probably want to do better for like the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I have a friend who is a senior vice president for ITT Automotive. I worked with him a lot over the years. And he had a country, they had 60 operations outside the US. Most of their business was outside the US. And he had one particular controller of a plant that was going to wanted to abide by the laws. He saw certain things and he thought, well, it was okay for him to give gold coins as gifts. It's like, oh, okay. All right. Somehow or another, he came up with an idea that he thought, sometimes people are going to interpret the laws. Then they start thinking about cheating. How do I bend the rules? Okay. I see your rule. Now, how do I bend it? So that you won't fire me, but I can get what I want done. So sometimes there's powerful incentives outside the U.S. in particular to work more with local custom. Okay. So all those things you mentioned are all good. Policies, anti-corruption clauses in contracts. That's the other thing. If I'm going to hire someone to do something for me, I need to have in the contract. Okay, so if I do have a third-party representative getting the building up, okay, like a contractor or something like that, there has to be. You understand? I need you to abide by our anti-corruption laws here in the U.S. So you're going to help me build the building in Zimbabwe. That's fine. That's great. You're a contractor. But this is the way it needs to be, has to happen, right? So at least you can say, I told them not to do this. Okay, it was in our contract. This is if nothing else, cover your backside and make sure they understand that that in the contract, this is what the expectation is. So all those kinds of things are how we kind of protect ourselves against the kind of things that Walmart didn't have any excuses, right? Because they were all part of it. Had they had the excuses, had they said, hey, we told these guys not to do this. If they're breaking the law, it's on them. Get them. We didn't do this. Okay. Okay. This is stuff. the Department of Justice had a problem with the fact that Walmart knew about it in 2005 and didn't do anything about it for 6 years. That's troubling. Let's see. What does the board have to do with this? Okay, because the textbook is big on board activity. First of all, they need to be apprised of the problem, so you have to have an internal function communication that goes up, particularly whistleblowing kind of things that goes up to the board. The board can figure out if they need to conduct investigations, and they should. And they should have an internal audit function that is overseeing these kinds of payments and so forth, as we've all mentioned here. So this is nothing new. It's really, at the end of the day, it's the board's job. If you look at all these fraud cases we're going to go through, that 99% of the time, it's right in the board's lap. The board should have known. They should have done something about it. Okay. They should, and keeping things out of the board's vision is part of a corrupt organization, because the board, once they hear about it, they can't unhear it. I'll tell you a funny story. That same friend of mine is named Bud Kalesa. He's retired now. But he had some bad news for the president of his organization. He was a very famous CEO. And they were in an airport together, or they were crossing paths in an airport. And my friend, who was a senior vice president for finance, had to tell the CEO some bad news. The CEO knew the bad news was coming. Don't know how, but he knew. And my friend tells a story. He literally had to chase him through the airport and chase him into the men's room so they could tell him this bad news. And so the CEO was obviously, and this is the way leadership is, unfortunately, if I never hear about it, I'm not accountable for it, and I don't want you to tell me. If you tell me, now I'm in trouble. You send me that email, now I'm mad at you, because now I can't say I didn't know about it. So, when we talk about management and talk about ethics and things, keep that in mind, because once you have a subordinate and they tell you something, now it's your problem. Okay, it is your problem. It's on your. If you don't do something about it, you're a problem. Okay. Okay, so all that stuff we know. I'm gonna skip through. Oh, you might have caught this one. How can the board of directors ensure that the operational activities of the company don't subvert the governance? And Walmart wanted to make a lot of money. They had all this thing. How do they make sure that they still have proper governance? And last semester, we had the board has to consider, do they have the right tone at the top? And you might have saw this, I guess, about 6 months ago. This was the CEO of Astronomer, and he was at the basketball game, I think it was, and that was the HR director, and the kiss cam focused on him, and the board of directors learned something, okay? And they learned, okay, this is not someone we want at the top of the organization, was fired the next day. So anyway, all right, so Walmart case, the big penalties, you know about it, and the lessons are, one of the lessons is it's not a joke. The FBI does hold corporations responsible for compliance with the FCPA. And no corporation, they say, this is what they said, no matter how large, is above the law, right? Okay, we hear that story all the time. And avoid this is the lesson. Avoid this. It's bad for business. Executives usually are more responsive to this than you might know. We didn't hear about it. We didn't care about it. Walmart's done a good job of keeping it quiet, I guess. But it is a problem. All right. So we've talked about all these things. What can we do to make sure the locals are involved? And we've already talked about all those things. So let's get to WorldCom. All right, you should know this one very well since you've turned something in. So let me give you a little quick 2-minute summary of some things you might not know. I think you'd probably do. Okay, so that's a quick heads up. I think it's kind of useful in case you didn't realize how big of a problem this really was. Okay, so very large. Now, you might have noticed that Scott Sullivan got 5 years because he ratted out his boss. Okay, is what it amounts to. So this Bernie Ebbers is a very interesting guy. They didn't really think they were going to be able to put him away. He had all the classic excuses. I'm not an accountant. What do I know what's going on? I asked the accountants to do it. He had what they call the all shucks defense. He was a high school coach, started with nothing. He's very influential, very charismatic in terms of getting people to do things. Taught Sunday school. Okay. Did not personally benefit from the fraud. Well, I mean, he didn't. There's nothing in it for him per se, but he was a classic good old boy. If you haven't been down to Mississippi, you don't know what I'm talking about. But he was a good old boy. All right. He did use his Enron or WorldCom stock to buy all kinds of things. Okay, a giant Canadian ranch, in addition to a palatial home, a yacht, acres and acres of timber in Mississippi and so forth. Okay. And to get that, there's an interesting piece of the story that he got the money to buy all those things by using his stock as collateral. Okay, so here's an ethical issue. When the stock price went down, the bank gave him a margin call, if you will, and said, "Hey, our collateral isn't what it once was, and you've got a loan. We need you to put more up in collateral for the loans that you have." And so the board loaned him $408 million to keep his loans from going into default. Now that by itself is an interesting thing. So Princess, think about that for a minute. Did the board do the right thing there? Why not? Why is that wrong? Why do you think they did it? Why did the board lend him another $408 million? Because his loans were in trouble. Personal loans were in trouble.
Based on
Can you speak a little louder, please?
saying like I think like they decided to loan based on the level of
Okay.
also
So any CEO can get a $400 million loan, you're saying, because they're CEO?
they didn't think much into it. They just decided.
Okay. All right. I want someone who's little more cynical than Princess is. I need some more cynicism, too, babe.
What the wrong thing time, but when they were doing this, they were trying to save the company because if the CEO sold these shares at the time, all this are going to panicking, people going to sell the shares, it was going to for the company. So they're trying to buy time. So that as he sell his shares, then the company remains standing. But by doing so, they lost their independence to this guy, because this guy now was in charge.
Okay. So let me expand on that a little bit. So what Tube is saying is this is going to affect them. This is going to affect stock price. So think about the different scenarios here. One scenario is the banks foreclose on his loans and it becomes public knowledge that the president of WorldCom is in financial difficulty. That's not good for business, right? That's not good for WorldCom business. And all the board of directors has an interest in that not happening. I think that's kind of a principal thing. It also it's gonna tank the stock. People are gonna wonder what's going on, and so they were basically trying to protect shareholders because and they were sort of forced into doing it. I'm sure they'd rather not done this. Princess, I don't think they were. I mean, this was an emergency thing. I don't think they wanted to give him the money. He was well paid. I think this is more they were trying to save their own situation. Many of them had their own shares of WorldCom stock, and so it'd be great damage if the president is financially irresponsible. Yeah.
I'll say there's definitely the self-preservation aspect, but also it was media conflict of interest because some of the resources were referring to the board as Bernie's board, so they were very say loyal to him, and I think he was an intimidating character as well.
Yeah. There's also that he was an intimidating kind of guy, and he did have a board that was gonna, that this was their job. Just yes, whatever. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about how the income is manipulated, because I think if you don't understand this, you kind of don't know. These are the bag of tricks. This is kind of more what you might see in audit, but I want to go over it kind of quickly in case you didn't know about it. But Ebers was the same kind of guy as we're going to see in Health South. He's one of these people that's going to say the numbers can't be right. And I'm going to show you Scott Sullivan's approach is here, a quick video. It's going to push back on the people that are reporting up to say, yeah, you obviously are wrong. Go back and bring back the right numbers here because you obviously made a mistake. And that was, Ebers' mantra. That was Scott Sullivan's mantra even more so. And I'll show you that in a quick video here in just a minute. But there's definitely that situation. But there were three things that they did. There were three major things that WorldCom did, all of which were pretty basic. One was capitalizing line expenses. Basically, the cost to rent phone lines, they wanted to call that not a period cost, but a capitalizable event and spread it out over 20 years or 15 years or something like that. That's really, really basic. And that actually was caught by Harry Markopoulos, the guy who outed Bernie Madoff too. There are analysts out there all over the place that are watching all of the numbers in your company. And when I was at ITT in Detroit, I had a friend across the hall from me. Every day, all he did was answer the phone from analysts in New York saying, why this? Can you tell me this? Well, how did this come? There are people going through these financials with a fine-tooth comb, seriously. And so Bernie Markopoulos caught this. It was hard to see. But that's why the SEC was interested, as was alluded to in that little video. They had been getting complaints about unusually profitable operations of WorldCom. It didn't match up with other telecoms. How is it they're making so much money, and how is it this expense is lower than others? Okay, the analysts didn't understand it. At least one analyst didn't understand it. So that's how these things get busted out in the marketplace. So they were charging the line expenses. That was one thing. Then they were using the reserves. Now they referred to that in that little video. Do you understand cookie jar reserves? Some of you do, some of you don't. Have you learned it in your intermediate class? Yushin, you know what cookie jar is, what a reserve is? Okay, yeah, they are going to. I just want to make sure because it's important you understand what the bag of tricks is here a little bit to me. So for example, let's just give you a quick reserve example. All right, so let's suppose that you do, and you could do this with warranty expense, you could do it with any estimation. So in year one, you say, we're going to reorganize the operations here at WorldCom, and let's set aside, you're going to do these reserves on a sunny day. We've been making tons of money. And so rather than showing all that money as profit, because then you're going to be held to making that profit next year and the year after, you're going to be, it's like you have a great year, but you don't want to be held to that standard forever. So you want to push some of that profit into the next year. And so they say in year one, they say, okay, we're going to do a reorganization, and that reorganization is going to cost us $5 million over the next 3 to 5 years. Okay. And that's going to become an immediate expense in year one. Okay, and so then year two, you find out, year two is not going as well at all. And so you basically say, we're gonna excuse me, year two, you're actually spending the money. You're actually doing the reorganization. So you spend 2 million. Okay, you credit cash, debit the, set aside the reserve. Okay, the reserve for reorganization is up here. So in year two, you're actually doing some of those things. So you spend 2 million and it goes against that reserve. And then in year three, you have a bad year. Year three, you have a bad year. Say, okay, we've reorganized enough. We overset aside. So what's going to happen we're going to have to take the reorganization expense, the liability here. Let me check. Let me make sure I got this right here. I got this. Oh, so year one is good. Year two is good. Year three, here's what WorldCom would do. I'll make it as if it's WorldCom. In year three, I want to take the 3 million and I want to reduce the liability for reorganization, the reserve. And instead of crediting reorganization expense, I'm going to credit revenue. So in taking what I set aside as an expense, a future expense in time or earlier times, I'm now reducing I'm getting rid of that reserve now, and I'm calling it revenue. I'm calling it revenue. Now you could do that with warranty, set asides for warranty expenses. You could do that. Anything that you set aside as a reserve, you can manipulate your income that way. Okay, and it won't necessarily be easy to see. Okay, so that's one thing they were doing. Now, in addition to capitalizing expenses, they were closing out their reserves and calling it revenue. Still pretty basic. And then the third thing they were doing was acquisition strategies. It's implied in that video that once they couldn't buy Sprint, they were in trouble. Why? Why should that affect them? Right? Connor?
And maybe do something with like financing with debt, saying, "Oh, well, we're financing all this debt because we're buying up Sprint," or that's just a guess.
Okay, that's kind of mysterious, isn't it? Let me give you a quick explanation of it's actually a fraud red flag when you see a company that's constantly out buying other companies. Now, why? Because this got me very curious back some years ago, and so it works like this. First of all, these companies will sell their acquisition strategies as part of their their way of business. They will always say that we're acquiring others and we're getting synergies and it's economies of scale and it's all good. And once we acquire this other company, we're going to be even better now. They're going to sell that line, okay? And there's part of this is an illusion. Part of this is a manipulation, and how so? Well, think about it. Let's say that WorldCom is going to buy a small company, Smallco, okay, and they can buy it with stock, or they can use cash or what have you. And when they buy Smallco, that's going to be a cash flow going out from investing, okay. Doesn't affect cash flow from operations, so there's some cash going out for that. But before the deal is done, they're going to have the small company do certain things. But one thing is certain: when they buy the company, they're going to be in a situation where when they sell the products of the small company, that is going to be cash flow from operations. But the money that went out to buy it is cash flow from investing. So you're going to have this situation where cash flow from operations, which would be the small company, is basically being let me rephrase this. Okay, come back here. So all of the product of the small company. When you sell it, it's cash flow from operations, but when you bought it, it's cash flow going out for investing. So in effect, you're moving more cash flow into the operations section than you should. Okay. So it's a way to move and make it look like you've got more cash flow in your business than you really have in terms from an operational perspective. Okay. Because if that business would have stood on its own, what they had bought, what they had produced in inventory would be cash outflow from operations. They would have had money going out to buy it, money coming in when they sold it. So we really are making a kind of a twist here where we're pumping up our cash flow from operations. And you can make it even better than that because what you can do, and you can read my notes on this, and you might find it helpful. Where you can have the acquired company to do certain things. You can have them pay all of their bills before you acquire them. So you want to accelerate expenses. You want them to stall receipts. You want them to tell their customers, you don't have to pay us right away, to kind of postpone receipts and accelerate expenses so that after you acquire them, you're going to look even better. Okay. So once the acquisition occurs, you're going to say deposit any checks that you've received, start collecting from customers, and kind of slowly return to normal. But in doing these things, you basically are almost guaranteed of pumping up cash flow from operations. And there's so much of a focus in the marketplace on cash flow from operations. This also guarantees that WorldCom can say, after we bought this other company, Sprint or whoever, look at what a great effect it had on our cash flow. Look at how well things are going. Okay, this is all good. So it really has to do with the statement of cash flow and what's going to happen when you acquire things. And you notice that after they couldn't get Sprint, all of a sudden the wheels came off the bus because now they had to show profit just on their business and they couldn't hide it with these acquisitions. They couldn't hide their cash situation by acquiring more companies and pushing more of their costs through cash inflow from operations, which really weren't cash inflow from operations at all. All right, so you can think about that. You can dig into that a little bit more on your own. But what are the mechanisms? Got a few minutes here. We'll finish this off on next Tuesday, but let's kind of get this started. So we just described how they pushed profits to the next period, right? We talked about capitalization. We talked about the reserves and pulling down the reserves and calling that revenue, and then juicing cash flow from operations via acquisition. So those were the three methodologies, 1, 2, and 3. Why did Arthur Andersen go along with this? Gray? Sure.
I was a staff accountant. I realized this was happening, and instead of being a whistleblower, I just quit and then went out and bought as many put contracts.
Well, put contracts don't last a long time. Keep in mind, right? I don't know how far out you can go on that because they might just stumble along for many years like this. But yeah, that's an interesting situation because the SEC would want to know, did you take insider information? They're not going to worry about you being a whistleblower or not. They're going to say you had inside information and they're going to take your stuff back, right? Because you worked there. So you can say, but they're crooked. Say, well, why didn't you do the right thing then if that's the case? So, Jacob, why did Arthur Andersen, did they not, were they that dumb?
I mean, probably not. It's probably because WorldCom was one of their major clients and making a lot of money. So
everybody's making money, right? Everybody's making money. Okay. What year was this? Anybody remember? Was it 2002? Okay, so if it's 2002, then the Y2K is past them now. But Arthur Andersen was still very much in the mode of generating a lot of profit and putting a lot of pressure on their audit section. You have to understand inside of the firms, there's basically a consulting piece and there's an audit piece. Now, the consulting tax is really related to the audit in a lot of ways. So let's just call tax and auditing more or less together. And then there's the consulting. Where are they making the most money in most of these firms? Consulting. Okay. Okay. How are they splitting the profit? Is it even across partners, or is it based on the money they bring in? You sure about that? I don't think it's that way. I don't think it's that way. I think there's kind of everybody has a different formula, a different algorithm, but I can tell you the consulting arm wouldn't want to split away like they all do and all have done many, many times. They wouldn't want to split away if they were getting what they thought that was their fair share. And so Arthur Andersen had a bad problem with that. They had internal fighting, a lot of pressure on the audit people to do better, to produce more profit. And so a big issue here was profitability and speed and getting the work done quickly and making money off of audits. Okay. They also had Enron problems. This ended up hurting Arthur Andersen. They had to settle for a $65 million lawsuit a few years later. So there obviously was shortcomings in the audit. Cynthia Cooper was the one who brought this to light. So I'm going to bring next time you meet, we're gonna wrap these questions up. I do want you to know we have a very interesting little short video from David Myers. David Myers goes around and he lectures for $10,000 or so. He'll tell you about his life of crime, and he'll tell you why he listened to Scott Sullivan and what kind of pressure was brought onto him. But Arthur Andersen, really, they're making money. It doesn't hurt to look too terribly closely, right? All right, we'll pick it up on Tuesday. Have a nice weekend. And the lineup sheet is.
I have it right here.
Oh.
Right here today.
I know.
Yeah, I'll give you the sign. Oh, you not sign for.